In the current culture, radios are often seen as an outdated, ugly, and inconvenient piece of technology, especially in reference to radio usage in vehicles. As of 2021, the radio has been on a slow and miserable decline alongside its brother, cable television. Even though the radio is mocked and ridiculed in today's day and age, the technology used to make such an invention is complex and deserves to be studied. This video will go on to discuss a brief explanation on the radio functions, highlight some of the radio's most important advances, and attempt to answer the question, what lies ahead? I want you to think about the radio for a moment. What immediately pops into your head? For me, I think of pressing the on button and turning into a radio station to listen to music. Now, let me ask you this. Do you know how a radio works? No, I don't mean just hitting the on button. I mean, how does it really work? How does music travel in the air and transport itself into a car? Well, the answer, as one might guess, is fairly complicated, but can be broken down into digestible pieces. The principles begin by defining what exactly a radio does. It's a method of transmitting electrical energy from one place to another without using any kind of direct wired connection. Meanwhile, the purpose of the radio is to send and receive information by using radio waves. Another important aspect about the radio is to comprehend just how fast radio waves travel. I like to think of radio waves as the Force in the Star Wars world. To loosely quote Yoda, and just imagine I'm doing a Yoda impression, it surrounds us and binds us. Radio waves are traveling all around us at such high speeds that we can't even pick it up. To be specific, radio waves travel at the same speed as light. So, as a bit of a visual, radio waves can get to the moon and back in just 2.5 seconds. Next, the process of actually sending these signals are through the use of a transmitter and a receiver. As the name suggests, the transmitter is the piece of equipment that sends out the signal through the air. The receiver then detects and catches the incoming radio wave. There are two different kinds of broadcasting methods, FM and AM. The main difference between FM and AM is that an FM radio is detected by having the radio waves have a difference in frequency. Frequency relating to how fast the radio waves are created. With an AM radio, it is detected by having changes in the size of the waves. Naturally, the introduction of the digital radio has taken the crown for the most reliable radio type. This is because the big setback with AM and FM radios has been the ability to lose the signals easily. The FM and AM signal attach themselves to the radio wave, right? So think of it as a surfer riding a nautical wave. Using this analogy, FM radio can be determined by analyzing how many waves a surfer can ride. With AM radio, it can be determined by seeing how big each wave is. Because the surfer has to ride these waves to deliver a message, and because we have to determine the message based on the height of the wave and how frequent it is, if the radio wave is lost in the current of the ocean, let's say, so is the message. Digital radios overcame this problem by having a stronger signal due to the message being sent out in a numeric format. The receiver decodes ones and zeros as opposed to decoding radio wave amplitude or frequency changes. Of course, there are a lot more details that can be uncovered here when regarding the mechanics of a radio, but this should set the foundation for a basic understanding. Even though some may not see the point in understanding the fundamentals of a working radio, it is still important to grasp the history relating to the discovery of the radio. Some radio enthusiasts like myself would begin the story of the radio discussing the patent war between Nikola Tesla and Guglielmo Marconi, or as I like to say, Giglio Macaroni. However, the first step of the radio started back in 1820, where the discovery of the electromagnetic waves and their potential were uncovered by Hans Christian Ørsted. Specifically, Ørsted found that a magnetic field is formed around a wire that contains a flowing current. It wasn't until an English physicist confirmed this theory in 1830 that people took this discovery seriously, and not just one of a scientific fallacy. Continuing, in 1864, James Clerk Maxwell, an experimental physics professor at Cambridge University, published a theoretical paper stating that electromagnetic currents could be perceived at a distance. Maxwell also boldly postulated that such waves traveled at the speed of light. In 1906, the first long-distance human voice was sent from a radio station in Massachusetts all the way to Virginia by a Canadian physicist. It was at this time where the possibilities for radio broadcast became prevalent. Radio started to become used globally, but not to play music. Instead, the radio was used as a way of communication for various nations' militaries. The radio especially became helpful during the First and Second World War. After World War I and the start of World War II, the radio grew out of its shell and became a household device that did more than just broadcast the news. The top 40 in music became popular during this period, and the target audience went from families to preteens up to adults in their mid-30s. Music and radio continued to rise in popularity until they became synonymous with one another. And new forms of music, such as rock and roll, began to emerge. Now that the possibility for entertainment broadcasts started to grow, the radio became a means of telling fictional stories. There was actually a moment where some listeners did not catch on to the fictional aspect of a certain outrageous broadcast. George Orwell, the director of Citizen Kane, would broadcast a fictional story about a town being overrun by aliens. Unfortunately, most of those listeners believed they were listening to a real news broadcast, so everyone was running in terror and you had newspapers being put out talking about this incident. It's pretty funny when you think about it. Not for them. With all that being said, new and better technologies have surfaced more than seeing Hollywood celebrities being cancelled and Me Too'd. Thanks to the creation of the smartphone and the internet, the radio has steadily slowed in terms of innovation. Some argue it's only a matter of time before the relevance of the radio dwindles. Some say that flame has already been extinguished. Even though users in their vehicles mainly use smartphones in place of the radio, many governments around the world still continue to use radio communication amongst their military, airports, and local police departments. The public's use for the radio probably will be coming to an end very soon, but the radio will always live on in human history as being the stepping stone for modern technology. To use another analogy / metaphor / simile as whatever you want to say, the radio walked so 21st century technology could run.